That works.
All right. So the whole premise is just Black excellence in San Diego. These are casual conversations, man.
Okay.
Casual conversations. So it started last year after Ahmaud Arbery.
Okay.
And, I'm a biotech guy in San Diego, like pharma. And have often been in these spaces of trying to broker majority spaces with underrepresented folk, right? And more chairs around the table and do all that. And something about like after Ahmed happened, I was just like, man, I think I need to go have a different conversation. You know what I'm saying? So this is kind of a labor of love and super, Matthew-centered in some ways, right? I'm personally just looking for beacons and bright lights here in this town where I plan to be, God willing, till it's all said and done. So, generally speaking, I was looking to map folks kind of in education spaces, in arts spaces, in kind of where you're at, tech, entrepreneurial spaces, even kind of faith space. I call all that wellness, generally speaking. And then politics and money, like who can trace how the money moves in San Diego and what happens. And it's kind of unapologetically dude focused too at the moment, as loosely as we can hold the word man or male, every representation of, that's how you orient, come holler, So I'm also trying to illustrate that Black man is not a monolith, it's not a monolithic.
Yeah.
Right? So anyhow, that's kind of my trajectory. And so then really we just have these conversations and try to mine from your experience gems, tips, tricks, anything that anybody kind of like, the Alex Waters is like 10 steps back, 5 steps back, 2 steps back can be like, oh yeah, if dude, oh yeah, okay. Oh, that's okay. I see me in that. I can do that, So that's really it. So I usually go, what you doing now? How'd you come to be doing that? And where are you trying to go? And then just lessons and things along the way, really. So I'll pepper you with questions. You can answer what you want. You can say what you want, So
good.
So thank you for being here. If I were to meet you in the backyard at a barbecue and roll up, with my beverage and say, hey man, what are you doing in San Diego? What would you say?
You said, what am I doing, or how? Like, what do I do in San Diego?
It's open ended. However you would answer it. What's your main aim here in San Diego?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, what I do is I work with early stage entrepreneurs. Do a program that's funded through the city of San Diego called Connect All the Jacob Center. And so what we really work with are sort of very early stage small businesses and some startups. So it's kind of a blend of everything all kind of in there together to really help people build a solid foundation to continue on that entrepreneurial journey. And the focus is on low to moderate income and diverse founders. So that's what I sort of do with respect to how I've been in San Diego. I think for me, just across San Diego, it's really connecting the dots. It's sort of like the behind the piece of like what I do from an instrumental part of running the program. And I like to say that, professional sort of dot connector, right? Like I try to find what are those pieces and areas where, hey, this person, hey, have you heard about this program? Or this other program, it's like, hey, have you heard about this other program? Or, in what ways can I kind of facilitate just individuals' access to opportunity and information? That would be the short kind of piece of it that I would explain.
Got it. So how did you come to be doing it?
So actually, I came to San Diego. Oh man, time flies. But about, I guess about 15 years ago, initially, for graduate school. And then I went to graduate school, finished up, then moved.
What'd you study? Where'd you go? And why'd you pick San Diego?
So I studied philosophy. So I got my master's in philosophy at San Diego State. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the pursuits. I thought it was actually going to lead me into sort of academia and go into the PhD program. Decided that really wasn't for me. Went back home and got into a company that I thought I was going to be in for like 6 months. And I was going to travel the world and teach English and all this other kinds of stuff. And that never wound up happening. I was actually at an ed tech company. So an ed tech startup.
Where's back home? Where's back home?
Oh, I'm sorry. Right outside. Well, back home is Maryland, but so right outside Washington, D.C. Yeah. So I worked there for quite a few years, learned a lot about what it looks like inside of sort of a scaling startup and the differentiations and changes and all that kind of good stuff. Then decided, you know what, I want some sunshine again. I want to go back to San Diego, and I didn't like the sort of the feeling of what I would I don't like to call it the rat race, because I think it's like, you know, pejorative to folks who really enjoy and have careers and long plans, right? But I didn't like the sort of the cycle that I was in there, right? I didn't feel like I was progressing and learning in ways I wanted.
Were you near Prince George County?
Yeah, well, yeah. Actually, I'm from Prince George's County.
Do you know there's a dude? Damn, I'm gonna forget his name. He's probably our age though. I feel like we're in the same ballpark age-wise. But he's a buddy of Nate Parker's. You know Nate Parker? American Skin.
Yeah. I was like, no, I don't know Nate Parker here, but no.
Yeah, you know that dude. You know that dude. Birth of a Nation. He did before that. And damn, I'm gonna forget his name. Anyway, we'll come back to it. We'll talk about that later. But anyhow, so that's where you hail from. You came out here, said forget the 9 to 5, and then so how to describe for me the pivot then. So how did that work?
So I really started to get around sort of just startups in the startup space, and I really liked it just in general. Tried to roll out a ed tech startup with another person. Kind of went through some of the things there, and I like to say we did a lot of things that, when you think about it, it was all wrong, right? It's like you're just like, you do this, and it's like now, well, knowing what I know now, I look back at it and I laugh a little bit. I'm like, we had no clue sort of what we were doing or why we were doing certain things, but it was a great experience, and then from there, just got more involved in sort of the startup ecosystem and volunteering with different organizations that were doing like, you know, weekend events and, you know, listening to people, you know, pitch their startups, and just little by little, I just popped up everywhere. Like, it seems interesting, I'm going to go here. This event is open, I'm going to go here.
I've talked to Luis Martinez and Mike Roberts and like some of this like startup week thing. It's new to me. It's kind of funny. So even having been a person connected to the biotech scene and some of that startup ecosystem and venture and raising dollars and creating ideas around targets in biology, I haven't been as exposed to it on the tech front, you know, on the high tech front. So it's been kind of cool for me to get an introduction and see the bubbling community here. And in fact, I mean, I knew with the not Genentech, like Qualcomm's and whatnot, that there was this potential synergy between healthcare / biotech and wireless, at least too. So like the wireless life science community and some of that, I was like, wow, I wonder if San Diego could become a hub for that kind of thing. But what then led you into doing it in the capacity that you do it, so explicitly focused on underrepresented folks, and how has that been?
Yeah, so in all of that, I was meeting a lot of people, doing a lot of things. I actually started working on a project, which was another sort of city-funded initiative with UC San Diego. That it's a common thread of like helping these earlier stage founders, right? Like there's a clear process if you want to sort of build, you know, $1 billion tech startup and you got an idea and you're a coder and but where does everybody else sort of go that's kind of trying to make their way through the process and they don't actually know how to kind of get a foot into the ecosystem as a whole. And so I was at the Downtown San Diego Partnership, did this thing called Collaboratory for Downtown Innovation, where we just worked with a lot of early stage entrepreneurs, right? Had speakers come in and just kind of talk to them. And my thing was, I never looked at it from the standpoint of, okay, we are in that particular project, like we are specifically focused on like underrepresented sort of founders, right? But I am aware that like representation matters, right? And so when somebody comes to you and they look like you, or they may have a same sort of similar story to you, it means something. And then as people come in and they feel that they're in a safe space to explore, they feel respected, then they're telling other people. And then those other individuals are telling people. And so it kind of builds in on itself. And so I think that was a big piece. And then this part with sort of the entrepreneurs we work with now, I was asked to come aboard and run this program and kind of build it. But that's kind of at the core of sort of the Jacob Center, just as a whole, right? Like it's in the Southeast San Diego, right? It's in a community that is, you know, highly populated with people of color, has a long history of that. And so that's kind of how I got to this point. And then it was kind of building out what it looks like, understanding that at least initially with the kind of connect all piece was that, and this is an interesting kind of transition of where the program is, where I think where it started and there were some ideas about what it could be. The initial piece was, hey, we'll have a bunch of sort of tech companies that come through that have, you know, diverse founders. But the reality is that there's a lot of people that you have to build more of a tech kind of pipeline. You can't just drop a program in and be like, hey, now we're going to have the same outcomes as you would if you had it in, you know, Sorrento Valley or further north. It's a different kind of founder. It's a different kind of businesses. There's different kinds of structures that are sort of around. And so what we found is that there's this wide cross section of people who want help, people who want to build businesses, people who want to go through some programming. And we were able to sort of help those folks. What I would say is get to the next stage of help, right? We're at the very beginning. So somebody's not going to come to our program and it isn't Y Combinator and it isn't like, there's a difference, right? And but that doesn't mean that somebody who wouldn't necessarily be a good fit for that shouldn't have some sort of structured program where they can start to build, because we know that when people are going through ecosystems, they're working across so many different programs. Programs don't always know, but I know people who have gone through our program who've already gone through other incubators and accelerator programs. And when they get out of our program, like hopefully they're going into other incubators and accelerator programs. Right. So it's not sort of like the be all end all.
Yes, but you're describing yours as like step one, in the gate, general info, orientation. This is what it is,
So it's like you've built something, and most folks, especially from an entrepreneurial standpoint, it's kind of a catch-22 because a lot of people have already built something, right? The entrepreneurial spirit has them and they just started running, right? Built something, they created something, they're loving doing it, but they don't have a lot of the structures that are going to be required to actually scale the business to make it sustainable. Right? They just kind of, and so what we really focus on is how do we make sure that that foundation is strong so that now you can continue to build a business that's, you know, as large or small as you like, right? That's the person. Like, I don't have any sort of thoughts on whether it's better or worse to try to build $1 billion company or try to build one that employs 5 people. That's up to the person, really.
You just touched on something that I'm interested in around pipelining too. So, you know, again, my bias is towards biotech a little bit, right? So there's a program in town the Paths program that Dr. Patrick runs at UCSD to increase representation in science, right? And so he kind of pulls on the typical places in town, and then even other places too, because that's UCSD. You kind of have to get accepted into a STEM program at UCSD, and then you get put into this Paths program, which kind of puts some wraparound support around those folks to enable their success in that environment. But part of the thing there that I'm curious, is like where, particularly for African descended folks, to be real with you, in San Diego, I'm still trying to understand what that looks like what the pulse for Black folks is with regard to whether it's entrepreneurship and excelling in tech and founding and starting and raising organizations like where you're at, or into the sciences, where the kind of K through 12, support structures are that would feed into something like that. So I'm not familiar with where the Jacobs Center is. Maybe you could tell me, but I'm curious too. Do you put much of a Black lens on what you're doing? And where have you seen kind of hot spots for that work, if at all, in San Diego?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess there's two parts to that question, right?
Yeah, there's like four things.
So one, I'll start with sort of where the Jacobs Center is. The Jacobs Center is in Southeast San Diego, so about 10 minutes south of southeast of downtown San Diego.
Well, where specifically? So I think of District 4 as like everything south of the 94, east of the 805,
yeah,
and above the 54.
Yeah. So it'd be around in that area. So it's like right with Euclid and Market. If you're sort of
okay, got it. Yeah.
So it's there. It's in that community. It's been there for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And the work, really, like the lens that I have that I take to it is much more sort of about equal access to just opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. And so for whether that is, traditionally sort of African American, whether that's Latinx, whether that's, Asian, and even sometimes when you say Asian, like it's a large group, but, whether it's Southeast Asian, whether it's, other communities and groups that are sort of in the area and in the region, right? Like being able to provide a space, because in that community specifically, there's a lot of different groups that are there, that live there, that have historical history, I guess, if you will, that are in the area, that all are still wanting the same thing, right? It's want an opportunity to be able to build something, whatever it is that they want to sort of spend their time on, whether that's, hey, I want to build a tech company. Hey, I'd love to build a personal services company. Hey, I'd love to build, more brick and mortar retail or consumer good, like any of those kinds of things. I think what's unique about what we do is that like when you look at pictures of individuals who have gone through our program and you put everyone sort of combined in there, it's much more diverse than you will ever find in most other sort of, I can't say all, but like other programs. It's much more diverse.
Why do you think that is? On purpose, or just by location, by content of what you're providing?
I mean, I certainly have really pushed to reach out to, and as we do marketing and talking to people, again, I think it starts with once individuals sort of know that when they come, whether they talk, whether they're there, they attend a workshop, whatever, right, that we really are about sort of empowerment as a whole. Then what people do is they tell other people. And a lot of people, they happen to be in groups that look like them, right? That share their same kind of values and share their same kind of So it's not, I don't think it's not an accident that if you're working with someone and they're like, yeah, you know what, I appreciate what that person does, and they provided me with an opportunity or access to something, someone's going to tell somebody, hey, you should go over there and talk to them. Regardless of whether, they feel like they're going to either come back and get services or other things like that. So I think from that standpoint, that's the lens with which I kind of look at it. With respect to sort of the pipeline, I do think that there is a challenge, right? I think that there is a challenge of everything from investment to sort of structured programs to, especially from an entrepreneurship standpoint, one of the things we've been talking about recently a lot is this idea of like what risk looks like, right? And in a lot of cases, especially for, people of color, and then specifically African Americans and Black people, like the idea of risk and what the risk profile should be, people look at it like they get one shot. It's like I get one shot, right? Because I know when I walk into some place, when I talk to potentially an investor, when I go into a bank, when I do these things, like I got one shot to make this work. Whereas I don't think in other sort of areas or structures that people approach it in that same kind of way. Especially when you think about sort of like, I know a lot of folks talk about venture capital. It's a very small percentage of the total number of people that are ever going to get funding. But even if you said, hey, why isn't the risk profile the same as it would be for somebody who's got an idea, doesn't have anything else, and just because an individual happens to have gone to Stanford, which is cool, but like I'm willing to throw a lot of money at them to figure something out, where a person over here is like, I wouldn't even provide them with $5,000-$10,000 to build out an idea or test something. And so I think changing what that looks like and changing how people view risk associated with entrepreneurship sort of in a traditional sense, or building sort of larger businesses. Because I want to be very clear, entrepreneurship happens everywhere, right? You go into any neighborhood, and especially in some neighborhoods that are sort of lower on the sort of economic scale, like people like that, literally entrepreneurship is everywhere. You go to a place everywhere, somebody is figuring out something, they've built a little business. Now, it may not be in all cases, it may not necessarily be a structured in the same kind of ways, right? But person that, has a side hustle where they're doing something, or they're, hey, they buy a stack of t-shirts and they get them printed and they get like, those are all entrepreneurs. And I don't think that people think about it in that same kind of way, where if we put some structure to it, then maybe, those things can grow or replicate more and more and more and more.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think I felt like I've heard that for a long time, right? Like the hustle is, the necessity is the mother of invention. Like all of that required creativity, in communities where folks' backs are against the wall, like should so be flipped, right? It's evident, particularly in communities where people are trying to make something out of nothing. So, I focus on this Black thing, man, so I'm not gonna let the Black thing go. so for you coming from PTC to San Diego, what's your take just on the pulse, and maybe even rank it in terms of your own importance, like how important it is to you? Because, I'll say this almost every conversation I have like this, like, I'm in biotech, I'm in North County, I'm in majority spaces. My mom is white, my wife is white. Like I'm super assimilated Negro, right? And I could stay that way if I wanted to, just like in my little bubble over here, and not identify and not associate, which would go against all my principles. And maybe in some ways I have, like to my own demise for a while. I've been here since 2002, just doing what I thought I ought to do. But now as I turn to go try to find kind of what is the heartbeat, get my finger on the pulse of Black San Diego, this is part of kind of my line of questioning with a lot of folks, either that are raised and are native or that have come in, like what importance does that play for you personally? Like to what extent have you kind of gone to seek out Black resource in San Diego? How is that something that's important to you, or? And I don't want to say it like that to to make you say like, no, it's not important to me, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it is interesting. I think a lot of what I've done, and even sort of the place where I was raised, right? Like it was literally all Black, right?
Yeah.
And so in a lot of instances and cases in places that, I've lived, and I was in PG County for a long period of time, then I moved back, I was in DC for a long period of time. And so I don't think that there was necessarily the need in that case to like search out because you look around and there's
it's like
everywhere, right?
Yes.
I definitely have been what I would say much more focused on or aware of, or when I go places, does this look like or fit the kind of place that I feel like is open? Whether there's one Black person or there's 50, right? Like, is this the kind of place where it seems like that it's open and wanting to have sort of me in the space? And so I wouldn't say that being in San Diego, I've like explicitly sought out sort of Black spaces or explicitly done in that respect. But always interested in being around and trying to empower and help other individuals who basically look like me, right? Like that's a big part of what we do in the work that I do, or trying to help other individuals get resources. Certainly when I find other people who are in the space, it's always a really great opportunity to sort of help or, just collaborate, throw some ideas around, whatever that might kind of look like. But I am very like sort of aware of who else is sort of around and what other individuals are, even from a standpoint of like organizations that I'm interested in participating in or, volunteering time with. Like I'm very careful to make sure that, hey, there are other people that are there that have shared experiences and things like that. But I wouldn't say from the standpoint of like, have I really intently sort of dove in? And I think a portion of that is because I think my expectation was because I know what the population is in San Diego. Like I've never really thought about it as like there's not that many Black people here in San Diego.
Surprisingly, though, if you go by census, it's like 6%, which, national average is like 13. So, okay, half the national average, but still 6%. I think the Bay is like 6%. Or places where you think of more Black folks being, there's at least a little more of a cultural.
I would figure the Bay would be way more. But I guess it's smaller.
The Bay is hella diverse, and smaller,
But even when you say that, okay, 6% with the average, but then it's like, well, but I guess my frame of reference is literally living in Prince George's County.
I know. Compared to that, right? You're from the other side of it. So, so words like I've heard you say so far, safe, respect, open, like important to me too, so, where have you found spots like that where you've been like, if you were pointing either to organizations or even people in town that have been inspiring to you, or that you've been like, I'm down with that. For you personally, who comes to mind, or what places come to mind?
It's a good question. I think there are subgroups in a lot of different organizations, like sub areas in organizations, and people are really adamant about, providing opportunities to do things. And I think here's the thing. I think that there are organizations, and then there are like portions of that organization.
No, I get it. It always comes down to people and relationships in my experience anyway, right? Like, it's hard to paint with one brush an entire organization or even an entire person, right? We're all quite diverse, right? You catch me on one day, you might like me. You catch me another day, you might not. So I don't want to box you in too much to that, but I think I'm trying to get at kind of either sources of partnership or inspiration for you in this town and where you've had good experiences.
So, I would say all of the entities and orgs that I did, a lot of stuff that's around sort of that early stage entrepreneurial stuff. So when you look at sort of Startup Weekend, Million Cups, right? Like places where, at least for me, I was like, oh, this is a great sort of environment to just kind of learn and build from those places. the universities and different programs they've had, where when we sort of partnered with them with the collaboratory, we actually partnered with UC San Diego, and they were very adamant about making sure that, hey, that there's representation, that there's people here who have an opportunity to kind of work there. An organization like Startup San Diego, right? Like, and they've been much more intentional about it and making sure that, hey, you know what, we want to make sure that like people feel represented in the sort of startup space. I think there's two separate pieces. There's like the startup space and then there's like the sort of the small business space. And not often, it's weird because I don't think most entrepreneurs who go into starting a business, they don't have the same division and barrier that people who like run organizations do around whether you fit into one of those boxes. And so for a lot of people, I think those are sort of in the more sort of startup-y kind of spaces, but then like the small business spaces, organization groups like the SBDC, they've always been, super awesome in helping people and making sure that they're represented and working there. A couple other organizations, so Focus, they have worked with sort of earlier stage entrepreneurs, much more sort of in the tech space, Stella Labs. And so there's a lot of different places that are, I think when I walk in, like, oh yeah, you know what, I feel comfortable here, right? Like, and it's interesting because for me, it's not, and this I think sometimes for some people it is, and everybody has their own sort of level of distribution that they feel like makes them feel sort of comfortable, right? But I think that it's not a matter of like if I walk in and everybody sort of looks like me or there's a percentage. It's like, again, when I walk in, like, do I feel like there's a level of respect here? Do I feel like that you're sort of, there's any prejudgment on who I am or what I am or what I have to provide or be a part of this community? I think that piece to me is much more important than just the distribution of individuals who are in the room. Because there are some times when I've been places, here and in DC as well, where you can tell that people literally are just trying to check a box and they're like, oh, hey, you know what? You have brown skin, so you should come here. It's like, you don't feel great and you don't feel sort of heard. And it's like, this is kind of weird. I don't like how this is sort of shaping up. I think that falls into the line of some tokenism. I'm not a fan of that. I don't
I'm not your Negro, to quote James Baldwin. Yes. So it seems like you've come from kind of being enamored with that entrepreneurial spirit and kind of the startup-y vibe, but you have personally decided to stand kind of in an administrative facilitating lens. Is there any part of you that ever wants to jump back in and like, okay, I think that's a good idea right there?
I think about it all the time. There's different kinds of things where, I throw out different kinds of ideas, and there's folks I know that I talk to, and we talk about doing different kinds of stuff. So I think at the heart, like, and I've realized this over the last few years, like, I'm a builder. Like, I like to build things, right? Just in general, right? And so that piece in and of itself is what really in a lot of ways drew me to the current position I'm in, even in an administrative role, because it wasn't something that was already fully formed, and it was something that was new. It was like, hey, we have an opportunity to like build something unique and build something that we feel like will have lasting impact. Now, there's still a lot of work to be done. Work we've done so far, but I think that there's a lot that we can do that's sort of more targeted on specifically helping individuals that are in Southeast San Diego, building up, like kind of we mentioned, sort of the pipeline. How can we sort of partner with organizations that are going to be able to amplify sort of what we're doing? And we've done a lot with some of the local kind of community partners, but there's a lot more footwork that needs to be done. And I think a lot of times, at least from my perspective, sometimes you can look at what we've done and say, okay, cool, that's good, but there's a lot more sort of on the ground in the community that we just need to do. Period. but my thought on that is that like you have to build something first, then you can figure out, okay, well, where are the gaps and what can you sort of critique and fix.
Yeah.
So we built it. Now it's time to sort of, tweak it and adjust it. Hey, well, what does this look like? What are we actually doing?
Iterate.
Iterative process. So
yes. What has been, and this is one of my favorite questions, I feel like in my own life, my failures, my shortcomings, the walls, the things that have nearly broke me have been rich resource, right? And any entrepreneur or anyone trying to hustle knows that, right? There's a book, Principles, by one of these super successful hedge fund dudes. It's like, what do you want? That, man, talk about building and structure. What do you want? What's true? And in light of number 2, how do you get to number 1? Which just seems like trial and error. I mean, that's really the heart of what he's saying. So what would you personally describe as some of your, most hard-won lessons? Or, looking back at Alex 5-10 years ago, with the wisdom of today, what do you say? Now I know. Well,
so there's a couple things. I think from the standpoint of, when I worked previously in sort of a tech startup space, I think that I underestimated the power of networks.
Yeah.
Right. It served to my advantage because that's my natural disposition, is to sort of be a connector of people and things and just saying it. But I definitely grossly underestimated what that actually looks like, and that isn't a default position for everybody.
Yeah, I know.
Print that I didn't necessarily lean into as much as I should have. From a just strict business sense, like you get what you can negotiate, not what you deserve. And I tell everybody that, like it's. Yeah. And unfortunately, like in cases, like you would hope that, folks would see the clear value in what it is that you do. But like at the end of the day, you're going to get what you can negotiate, not what you feel like you should have. So be very clear in what it is that you want. I think so. Those are the two kind of big ones. From an entrepreneurial standpoint, I think setting yourself up with a network of individuals who are also in the same space is essential to anyone who's going to be creating something or getting something off the ground. I hear you say it a lot, but like it's, even if you're like it, even if you take it out of the standpoint of like tech, because that seems to be like the sort of the box that people are like, well, I want to get into it, but I don't know how to code, or I want to build an app, or I want to. But like just surrounding yourself and constantly surrounding yourself with individuals who are in those same spaces doing that same kind of work is really like, it can't be understated sort of how important that is. But a lot of folks want to sort of like build something by themselves before they start to bring it out to other people to take a look at it and sort of like adjust it. And I think that comes from, especially if you're doing something that other people don't really understand, or even they may not necessarily value, then you may feel like, well, I can't show anybody until it's already made. And
there's something about this, man. So you touched on something. Did you watch the Queen's Gambit on Netflix?
No, I haven't seen it.
I loved it. It was dope. The premise is female chess player comes in and like blows up the game. I think it's a novel. I don't think it's true, but in it, there's a part of the story that comments on why the Russians are so good at chess is because afterwards they get together and kind of kibitz about it. Like all the greats share, and they're like, damn, this is what I would have done. Here's how you approach this. And all of the Western, particularly American folks, are super John Wayne about theirs. Like it's me against the world, and I've got, I'm the only one.
Yeah.
You see this sometimes in hip hop. I think the same way I'm a hip hop fan, man. But so often it works, but it's like a double-edged sword. So often this drive to be unique and don't bite, don't come, you better, you're going to be described as whack if you don't have your own thing that you're saying. But we can see in the greats, like with jazz and other arts, like the fundamentals are based on copying the greats. Like you need to learn by mirroring people that have done it and done it well, and then from the fundamentals you can innovate. So this idea of recognizing the power of your network and of people and of relationships, man, it's just, I like it. As you said it, it just lights me up, because I really agree with it. And that's part of what this Find 40 is about, finding like-minded folks of capacity and influence to think about how to kind of problem solve in San Diego specifically. So you're just like singing my song. Have you seen, or do you explicitly try to flip that switch for people? Or, how, I imagine you do, right? I imagine that you in that program are creating networks, or creating kind of ecosystems where people can really start to rub shoulders and get like, oh, I'm not the only one doing this. Are you that explicit about it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that the thing is oftentimes, and this goes kind of back to the power of networks, there's either two things. Either one, people just don't know how to do it, or they know how and they like underestimate the value of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When someone says, hey, I need X, it's like, how many people have you told that you need X to?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
How many individuals have you gone and you said this, whether it's online or in a sort of a personal space or in a business space.
Yes.
That's so funny. I think like, really helping people sort of see that. It's like, hey, look, you are connected to individuals who are going to be able to do different kinds of things and help. And also, one piece about the networking thing that I think that people also don't get is that there is a value for the person that is able to help someone.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
People only think about it in the one way of like, hey, well, I'm taking from this person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If it's a real genuine exchange and it's not something that's sort of manipulative, or that it's something that is, hey, I'm just trying to get over on people.
Yeah.
Somebody actually going to somebody and saying, hey, you know what? I'd love to have some help with this. Or could you, help me with this thing? I can speak for myself and other people who I've talked to about this. But I love being able to say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I learned something and now I can share it with somebody who's going to be able to share it with somebody. Like, that's great. Like, why should we not do way more of that in the space? So the one thing I try to pride myself on is, over the time that I've been just, working within, even in San Diego, right? Like, if anybody needs anything, like, I may not know what it is, but I'm more than happy to help anyone. To the point to where, when I go to a quick anecdote, when I was at we did like a panel at Startup San Diego a few years ago, right? And one of the things was like, how do we connect the ecosystem and the community? And then I realized that like literally all of the people who were sitting in the room, right, they came to this talk about like, how do we build ecosystem and how do we sort of create an environment where people can sort of share and exchange. And you look and it's like no one's sitting next to each other. Like two chairs in between people. I'm like, this is like that's the problem, right? Like so I was like, look, everybody, get up, come to the front, sit next to someone, like say hello, like if we're going to build out some of these sort of networks and opportunities. And so so I always say, look, anybody that wants to find me, you can call me. Like, I give out my cell phone number, like here's my email, like just if there's ways in which I can help, because I know that I've been very fortunate with individuals who have been willing to help me, right? Say, hey, look, check this out. And it doesn't have to be, you can be like, you're kind of doing this. You may want to check out what this org over here is doing, or you may want to check out what this person over here is doing. To reach out.
So true. I'm in business development in the biotech space, so I will often describe the real clear need for folks who can speak science and speak business and broker, because oftentimes at the bench, there's a whole other conversation being had. This is why it's cool that, and it's like 30,000 leagues under the sea, and to kind of bring that up and then serve it up is a real thing, and so why am I saying that? I guess I'm saying it is a very real barrier, it seems, for folks. There's the problem of kind of just like maybe more introverted folks who don't really dig doing this. Like, I'm not particularly chatty. My wife's like this. I'm not particularly chatty. I don't do small talk. Like this whole thing of just being able to talk to a wall that you do, speaking about me, I'm not really into that. And so, I think the opportunity for folks like you and I who pride themselves on connecting the dots, or not even pride themselves on it, just like kind of do it by nature and enjoy doing it. It's like a joyful thing. Big ups to that. I just think just communities need that kind of thing. And then there was something else I was going to say in there about just this connecting part. Anyway, I'm losing my train of thought on that, but I'm losing my train of thought on that. There's just something in there in the being the glue or being the, oh, I know what I was going to say. This is what I was going to say. When I first came out of graduate school, so I too left a PhD program where I thought I wanted a PhD, and I ended up taking a master's, not a bounced, in biochemistry at UCSD. And I needed a job. I'd just been married, I have a kid, and I was like, damn. And I went onto LinkedIn and started sending out these informational interview requests. And I did like 70 of them. They are still in my network, still people that I gained from and have back and forth things around. But just, so surprising when you send an email subject line, informational interview request to Alex Waters, like how, it's such a different thing. There's one thing to go ask for a job. It's another thing to go ask for advice. People will give you advice all day long and gladly, you know what I mean? Versus it's like the old adage, you go asking for money and you get advice, you go asking for advice and you get money.
It's funny you should mention that, because one of the big pieces that we do with all the entrepreneurs in our program is that whole customer discovery piece and really understanding that. And like pretty much like clockwork. Yeah. Everyone comes back and it's like, yeah, man, like I went and talked and they were just so open to talk to me. I was like, well, yeah, because like everyone, I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
Like, everyone loves to be a person who is able to help someone either connect the dots or connect someone and add value to someone else. It's like, if we're all nodes in this network, right? Yeah. Sometimes I like I said, I wish I could sort of, lay it out sort of more clearly for people. But like, if because someone talked to you, they're now able to introduce you to somebody else who they think highly of or can help out, or who's looking for somebody to do something. Right? Like, it's an exchange. And then they're like, oh, hey, that was amazing. Thank you. So then in their network, they've gotten some bonus points. And then like, it's this complicated system that we do. I just don't think everybody sort of lays out what those calculations look like, but we all do it. Like, if you go to a party, like everyone wants to be the person that brings a cool person to the party to hang out with other people, right? Like no one says it's a terrible thing. Yeah, oh, you're awesome, fantastic. You're gonna love this person. They're gonna be so great. They come to the party and then it's like, this is amazing. Who brought you? It's like, like yeah, that was me. Like, I'm the person that brought the coolest person to the party. Like, right? And everybody, like, so there's these interesting kind of ways, which I think a lot of times people have opportunities to do that, and they may not necessarily leverage it as much as they should, or allow themselves to kind of be in a space where somebody else could be able to.
Yes. I know we're kind of heading towards the top of the hour here. How's it been in COVID for you personally? Like, how's it going? How's life, man?
I mean, so, I'm so the program is completely gone online. And so like, I'm staying at home like everybody else. And so from that standpoint, it's been, I don't know if it's been as hard of a transition for me. I have a background in tech. And so like, I obviously believe that you can sort of learn and interact, engage with people in a rich way. I think from the standpoint of thinking about what is going to mean long-term, just in general, right? Like, I think there's going to be some hard decisions to be made around how do we redesign things that are going to work better in just our own lives, right? And so that's been a big piece of sort of me thinking about, okay, well, what's going on? How are things structured? How are, are we doing the right things? Are we doing the things that are going to, create the best benefits? And now it's almost like a hard reset for everyone. Not one person, I mean, maybe there is, but there's not anyone that I know that hasn't sat down and had to really think about things in a different way, because I don't think that most people, it may not be, depending on who you are, where you are, it may not be an imminent sort of threat of like death. Everyone has had the existential crisis of thinking about what it is like. And I don't think this has occurred in the United States of America in this kind of large scale thing in a long time, right? I don't think, because in a lot of times in cases when it happens, it is when you have a real sort of threat. People are constantly thinking about their life and what it means and all these different kinds. And I think for a long period of time, just because there haven't been any wars faced on the soil, there have been pockets of individuals who have had to confront that. I mean, you can go in any area where there's violence in a neighborhood across the world, in the United States as well, and people are constantly thinking about death and what it means. And I think this has just extrapolated out to everyone at the exact same time, thinking about, well, what does this life actually mean, and what do I want for it? If it could be snatched from me, through nothing that I've done, just interacting with people, then what does that mean? And I think that's a really interesting place. And I hope that we don't, obviously, won't come out of COVID, but like, I hope that people don't lose that when they go back to, it's like, there should be a constant questioning of, am I doing the right things? What does it mean to what I'm doing? How am I showing up? What am I wanting to get out of, this opportunity that we sort of, call life?
Whew, see now, bro, we can like break left right now and just drop right into it. You were studying philosophy, so I'm like, oh, we can have a whole conversation about this. So, I do want to talk to us a little bit about it. Do you, whether it's from a spiritual perspective, philosophical one, like, what is it? If you put that question to yourself, like, what do you feel like is your North Star, the thing that you are, whether that's something on your headstone, or if you're more of a cremation person, but like, what is it you cleave to most strongly?
That's a good question. I mean, I want to shy away from just being like, I provided opportunities for people and like that. What I would like to have on it is that the people could say, solid, honest person that lived intentionally. And like, whatever comes of that, because it could be, somebody builds a business, or, wanted to, that life could take a whole other turn and I could go and do something else. But I think that those sort of like key tenets and components, if that's the bedrock and foundation, then whatever I wind up doing will produce a positive result.
Oh, wrap complete. Oh, that's fantastic, man. I appreciate you spending an hour in the morning on a Monday rapping with me about all this here. I really do. How did you meet Mark? How are you all even connected?
So we went through the alt MBA.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, and actually funny, like, we didn't go through it at the same time. They had like the San Diego meetup thing. And I was like, oh, I don't know anybody from the alt MBA in San Diego. Sure, I'll show up. And I showed up, I met him. We were doing like the Saturdays, some circle kind of things. And he's just kind of kept in touch. So he reached out. I was like, oh yeah, cool. So because you had said that you had talked to Luis, and I know Luis pretty well. And obviously we're in this case with respect to startups, and he's done some Black and Latinx founders. And,
That's fair. So have you done like men's group stuff?
With
With Mark, so when you say Mark, I hear circle and Saturdays in my mind, based on how I know Mark, I'm thinking like men's group or like transformational stuff.
He has one we were doing for a while. It was a just folks from. It was initially folks who were sort of attached to the Alt NBA that were getting together on sort of Saturday mornings and just working on things like, okay, what are you working on? How do we help? How do we ask the right questions?
Okay, got it.
It was it wasn't just men.
Got it.
But then it kind of morphed, and now I got a buddy of mine, John Robinson, who's in San Diego, who he does like a men's kind of thing.
Got it. Yeah.
It's cool on Saturday. So
I'm saying he's on my hit list too because of Mark. Mark pointed to
John,
yeah. So I need to figure this out too because he was saying, well, he identifies as Black, and then I was like, what does that mean? You know, like I would have a whole. There's more to that story. I think I need to chase down. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. But anyway, man, like I say, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'll let you know. There's like a couple in the can ahead of you that I gotta like put out there in the world, and it's it's like a little YouTube channel, a little Instagram thing, sprinkle. So I'm just basically cataloging a repository of characters in San Diego, and we'll see what happens. But I'm glad to know that you're out there, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the chat, and then like if there's ever anything that I could do to help in any other way, definitely don't hesitate to let me know. And hopefully eventually once this COVID thing kind of breaks, it'd be great to, sit and have either a coffee or another beverage of your choice.
Yes, man. Yes. Likewise. Please consider the door was wide open. If anything ever crosses your desk and you're like, oh, I know I do. You know what I mean? Please, I'm here. So enjoy the rest of the day, okay?
All right. Take care.
All right, man. Take it easy.